What was law school like for you? Why did you go to law school in the first place?
I ended up in law mostly because I think if you came from an immigrant family, typically families that were Eastern European, even though entrepreneurship was sort of part of the trait, there was no real education for it at the time. It wasn't like MBA programs were really entrepreneurially savvy or teaching courses in and around the early and mid 90s. So for most folks, getting, at least in my family, getting a law degree was the equivalent of getting an entrepreneurial degree because you had the sort of classic immigrant mentality, which is, if it doesn't work out, then you've got a profession to back you. But really, most of the folks that were in my family did this because they were entrepreneurs and they wanted to have the skill set to be able to negotiate and do deals. And so that's why I ended up going.
Was that what you got out of it? Was the experience meet your expectations?
No, not at all. Look, law school for me was a rather brief experience. It was based on a false assumption on my part that I actually knew what lawyers did for a living. Because the vast majority of my family and people that were in my immediate circle that were lawyers didn't really practice law. They were predominantly entrepreneurs or business people within their firms. So I understood and got exposed to that side of their lives. I just didn't get exposed to the actual being a lawyer part of their lives. So I really didn't even know what practicing law in truth was. And got a pretty, rude awakening at the time when I went in and spent my first, I always liken it to like the first few nights in prison when you're fresh fish, like you realize, okay, I'm actually stuck here for 3 years because I can't leave because I'll feel worse. So I got to tough it out and figure out how to navigate through the system.
That sounds awful. You're in something for 3 years, you're stuck there, it's a little like jail. How did you end up going from there to actually taking a job as a young lawyer? How did you stick it out?
Well, I never really practiced. I ended up working, for me, I was only interested in law as it pertained to specifically the entertainment world and the sport world. So I kind of figured I had to out-hustle the system, and when you were in law school, it wasn't always the hardest thing to do, just given the context that a lot of people weren't in the mindset of hustling, especially around that time frame in around the late 90s. So I went out and I remember this, you have articling days where it's basically recruiting days. And typically at articling day, only the second year students go. But I went in first year and I think articling, they do it purposely. I don't know if you remember this when you were in school, but the articling day was like in the first 2 weeks of school. So if you were in first year, you never even really thought about it or knew what it was, but I went. And I got a job as a summer student after first year and second year, and then articled at the same firm, and realized that I wanted to become player agent. So I started a player agency when I was in school, and representing professional soccer players around the world, and grew it to a reasonably sizable business. And my firm that I worked for wasn't too keen on that. They didn't like the idea of somebody running a business out of the firm.
Instead of billing by point 1, point 2, point 3.
Yeah, that's the problem with law. Law is the last remaining feudal lordship. You go by a system that is based on time, not based on skill. And so no matter how good you were, or whether you were out billing senior or junior partners, it didn't really make a difference. You did your time and that was it.